Welcome to the class. Let's first of all talk about working in the design industry and what it kind of entails. I'm Marty Pfeiffer, an adjunct instructor here at College of the Canyons. In this class, we're going to be talking about a few different topics. Today, right now, we're going to talk about working with clients. Later on, we're going to talk about collaborating with colleagues, some legal concerns that we need to be careful of, technical issues, and then obviously basic design principles. And all of these will be related to what you're going to be doing, what you're needing to learn to fully utilize Adobe Photoshop. So first off, what to design. This may seem obvious, but sometimes that actually isn't as obvious as you might think it might be. First things that you need to think of are, what are the client goals? And sometimes clients are a little cagey about this, so you may have to kind of coax it out of them as far as what they expect what you're designing for them to do. Ultimately, it could be to, compel a sale, but it's not always financial. It could be about changing attitudes about, for instance, autism. So making people a little more tolerant of people that are a little different than them. And perhaps getting them to understand, oh, this person thinks differently. So I should, change my behavior so that we can work together effectively and not get so frustrated with them. So that would be a laudable goal. Doesn't have anything to do with money, but there is always a goal to any kind of design project. Otherwise, we're doing art, which is just, reflecting your own soul. But in the design industry, we're always working for our client goal. Art is for working for yourself. Design is for working others. So the target audience and demographics. So this is another thing, a discussion that you have to have with your client as to what they think their audience for their design piece should be. A lot of times clients will think, well, my boss is the audience. And that's a legitimate concern. You want to design something for them that's going to make their boss happy. But ultimately, the audience is the person that's being asked to respond to this piece of design that you're creating. And so they're the ones that need to be reflected. In movies and print, people love to see themselves reflected back at them. And so it's important to make sure that the audience is reflected in your design. For instance, if it's a senior piece looking for, maybe a housing apartments that have, special accommodations for seniors, you wouldn't want to show young people with children. That wouldn't make sense, and that would probably confuse the people that would be, the audience for that piece. So definitely when you make those kind of, stock art choices, look at what the audience will be and make sure that you're reflecting that in some way. It doesn't have to be exact, but it should be close enough that someone can look at it and say, yeah, that's me. Or it's like, oh, that's my friend. Yeah, we're totally fine with that. Accessibility. Picking on old people again, or not necessarily old people, but people with visual difficulties. Somebody needs new glasses. Are they going to want to read your print campaign that has tiny type and maybe not enough contrast between the colors? That's going to be difficult for them. It may look artistic and beautiful to you, but if they can't read it, it's going to be worthless. So think about the different challenges your audience could have encountering your design piece and how you might overcome them. It could be as simple as just making the font larger. A lot of designers like to have big images and tiny type. So type is has a lot of white space and looks beautiful. But if it's hard to read, then was it really worth it? So generally with older folks, you don't want to go smaller than 12 point, for instance, for a body text. For general audiences, you can go 8 to 10 points, no difficulty. And we'll talk about point sizes and typography later on in the course. Finally, how is this print or image going to be used? When I started out designing, I worked for a company called Kinko's, which is now FedEx Office. And one of the interesting things about that job was that I was hired as a typesetter. And so I would do resumes and, letters for people, little brochures. All of this was done at an extreme discount because the idea was that Kinko's would make up the price in copying services. And so we would provide them with a design. They may not even come in with a piece of paper that they need to copy. And by the end of the day, they'd be able to have a final product. One consequence of that is I got a lot of work early on in my career, a lot of varied work. Most of it was print. Now that I think of it, the last 10 years or so of my design profession, most things that I've designed have been video, or it's been going on the web, and maybe 30% has been printed. So think about, and this will affect things like resolution of images. Obviously, if you're going to print, you're going to have higher resolution images. And on the web and, in video, there are other concerns as far as that's concerned. Actually, screens are getting closer to print now with, Apple doing the Retina displays. So it used to be that, you would think of, your web images are 72 ppi. That's not necessarily true anymore. So definitely the higher resolution images you can have, it's always better. But sometimes if you're producing images that need to be efficient, they need to be small sized. And so you can't design something that's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels if it's going to be a little icon on a small part of a web page. So that's going to take longer to load in, and that's not going to make the client happy. So think about these things so that when you design something, your final product is viewable and appropriate for who it has been designed for.